Everybody, welcome back to FM. In part 4 of our NC Turbo installation series, we're going to be working on our water lines and installing the intercooler. Our first step with the water lines is to finish our water supply line. Now, we routed that in an earlier step before mounting the turbo. So we're going to find our line. We need to hook it up to the inlet side of the turbo. Okay. Now this should be a proper length. If you need to cut it short, now's the time. But we're going to add our clamp from the water supply line kit. Install it onto the hose barb. Tighten down the clamp with a 7mm socket. Now yours might be tied up against the brake line here too. You are able to manipulate the line a little bit to gain some clearance if need be. Now the next water line we're going to do is our steam vent. So we got rid of the old one because it would interfere with the turbo. So you're going to take your 5/16 hose from your water supply line kit. We're going to cut off 48 inches. The remaining length we'll save for later. So now that we have our hose ready, we're going to take our heat sleeve and we're going to cut off 24 inches. We'll feed our heat sleeve over one end of the line. Remember, we kind of have to do the inchworm method here. We're going to do it to where we have maybe 2 inches of exposed hose on the one end. Now we're going to take our one spring clamp that was included with the water supply line kit. We're going to install it on the end with the 2 inches of exposed hose. We're going to install the clamp about an inch or so up the hose because we're going to have to feed this down over a barb. Then we can move the hose clamp into position. Now to install the steam vent is in a pretty tight area that it's not easy to show you on the car. So we have our display head here. So we have our hose prepped from earlier. And this is the hose bar we're going on to. This is where the steam vent's originally attached. So you're gonna have to feed your hose down, push it onto the barb, and then in the space provided, take some long needle nose pliers, work the clamp down till it's securely in place. All right, now we're at the car and we're ready to install our steam vent. With it clamped into place, we'll route it underneath the brake lines and right over top of the water supply. Now that we have our steam vent routed at the back of the head, we're going to secure both it and our oil supply line a little better with some high temperature P-clamps. Now the little P-clamps are included with the oil supply kit, and the one large P-clamp included with the water supply kit. So we're going to remove 2 valve cover bolts, the one at the back corner, the next one up, with an 8mm socket. Now these bolts are a little special in that they pass through 2 threaded sections. So they'll unthread from the head and they'll float, but then they almost get stuck. So if you kind of hold it up against where it's stuck and unthread it again, now it comes out. So we'll install this front P-clamp first. So we'll slip it over our line. Pinch it closed. These ones are a little stiff because they're stainless. To use some pliers to help us a little bit. Then feed our bolt through. Might have to thread it through. Okay. Now we'll thread it through the first section. back to where it's floating. We want to direct our line. We want it to be clear of the valve cover, clear of our water return line, but also have some distance from the turbine. So we're looking good right there. Now that we're a few threads in, we can finish it with a tool. Now we're going to do our back bolts. Now this one's a little different because we're putting 2 P-clamps on this bolt. So basically what we're doing is we're going to have the oil pressure line run low, the water steam run high. So they'll pinch together like so. So P-clamp pointing down, P-clamp pointing up. So we'll get the oil first. This is where it's a little snug. I might actually pull my steam vent out of the way a little bit, give myself some room to work. Looks pretty good right there, so we'll get the P-clamp pinched. And we'll do the same for the water steam. That's looking good, so now we just have to feed the bolt through both P-clamps. Now we're in the float zone. Switch back to manual so I can All right, those are in. All right, with our orange P-clamps secured to the valve cover, we're now ready to finish tightening our oil supply line. So using a 7/16" wrench, we're gonna support the 90-degree fitting. And then using a 9/16" wrench, we're gonna tighten the fitting. Now you notice that as we tighten, the line wants to coil up a little bit. That's okay. We just wanna make sure we still have ample clearance against the turbine housing, because we'll be installing a blanket later on. If it's getting too close as you tighten, you can try to kind of lift up on it a little bit while you start to tighten, and then sometimes it doesn't go down quite as far. So the remainder of the steam vent line, the routing is somewhat arbitrary. There's a number of ways you can do it. The main thing to take away is don't let it rub on any sharp edges that will cut into it. Don't route it too close to the turbo. There is an accommodation on the air box lid for a P-clamp that will hold it in this area. We're eventually routing it up to here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna route it over the water supply line for the turbo, in between these brake lines. I'm gonna zip tie it so it's up off of these fittings. Like I said, it will P-clamp roughly right here. And then have it come over to the expansion tank. We do want to leave it a little bit long. If you remember the original hose, it had a dip in it just to keep a little bit of fluid in there. So we're gonna do the same thing. So we're gonna leave it at its length. You can cut it shorter if necessary. We'll add our clamp, install it, and tighten it down with a 7mm socket. Now the next step in our water line installation is actually our here core hose installation. Now it is a separate kit from the waterline kit, but we need to install it before we install our turbo water return. So this is the kit here. We have a custom formed silicone hose, and we need to install this pre-cut amount of heat sleeve. Now this heat sleeve is snug on this hose. Takes a bit of effort to get it slid over, but we're gonna end up with it positioned about like this on this end of the hose. Similar to the other hose, you kind of have to inchworm it. And it's a little worse as you go around the corners. You can see as I'm pulling it, I'm kind of wringing it, twisting it side to side, and that helps it move a little bit better. All right, once we get past that, so kind of 90s once and then 90s again, once you're past that second 90 is about where you want it. So about like so. Now our next step, we're gonna pre-install our clamps. Similar to the steam vent, we're gonna install them up about 2 inches, 1.5 2 inches, so we can slip the hose down over the barbs and then slip the clamp over top. The kit also includes some P-clamps. This one with the hardware we'll install later on once we've relocated our washer reservoir. We'll install this one once the hose is in place. All right, it's that time again. Another thing that's difficult to show you on this install, so we have our friendly head here. So we have our prepped heater core hose. This end, further away from the heat sleeve, needs to install on our lower radiator hose barb that we liberated earlier. So we're gonna take this hose, it's gonna slip down over that barb. We'll then use long needle nose pliers to slide the clamp down. And you see this notch in the back of the valve cover? That's basically the path of the heater core hose. And we'll hook it up to the heater core on this end. Now that you see it out of the car, we'll go ahead and do it in the car. So with the one end of our heater core hose connected, we want to put our P-clamp on. Now that's to protect us from a variety of sharp edges here. So we've got these two here, and then we also have this bracket with the grounds on it. So our P-clamp is going to mount using the cam sensor bolt. So that way our hose is kind of held up, away from this sharp point and away from this sharp point. So using an 8mm socket, we'll remove this bolt. We'll slip our P-clamp over the hose. Reinstall our bolt. Now just do a double check, make sure you've got some clearance where you need it. You can kind of tweak the P-clamp a little bit as needed to gain extra clearance. And we're gonna just double check that's tight. All right, the last step of our heater core hose is just to hook up the other end to the heater core. So we will slip it on and move the clamp into position. Now that we have installed the heater core hose, let's check one more thing. We want to check the orientation of this clamp that's on the original heater core hose. We want to make sure that the blades of the clamp are not going to damage our new hose. So I'm going to just take a moment and give it a slight rotation. That way when they're next to each other, they're not going to chafe. All right, our final water line is our turbo water return. So we're going to take our remaining hose, 64 inches, our remaining heat sleeve, roughly 12 inches, remaining clamps, T-fitting, zip ties, basically everything else from the water supply kit except for that P-clamp, which is for when we install the air box. So, have our hose here. We're going to install the heat sleeve onto one end, using the inchworm method again. We want just enough room for the clamp. Now we're going to take this to the car. All right, we're going to take the end of the hose with the heat sleeve. We're going to take our clamp, pre-install it, and we're going to install it on the water return fitting and tighten it with a 7mm socket. Now we're going to route our line across the back of the head. Now the kit does provide some double zip ties that we will put in place once we're happy with our routing, but for now, we're going to just get our line into place. Now we just want to make sure this line is free from any chafing of sharp edges or any areas that could get pinched. And we want it routed all the way up to the radiator. Now that we have our line routed the way we want, we have these double zip ties to secure it. So the way these work is you can wrap the zip tie around one hose, pass it through the head once, the first slot. We're going to do ours next to the P-clamp here. And then the remaining tail comes back around and through the second slot in the head. And then we'll cut off the tail. So we'll do that again in a few other places of our choosing. It's nice to not get them super tight, because then if you need to slide the hose through a little bit, you can do that. Now we're ready to hook up our turbo water return to the radiator. Now we're going to be teeing it into where a steam vent currently resides. So you're going to cut 3 to 4 inches off the end of the turbo water return that we've routed over here, which I've already done. Slip it onto one leg of the T-fitting and secure it with a clamp. Next, we're going to remove the steam vent from the radiator, and we're going to install it onto this leg of the T. And we do want this leg of the T pointing up, so it still functions as a steam vent. We want only air going, or mainly air going up through there. We will then hook this end of the hose to the radiator. So we are going to use a provided clamp here and a provided clamp here. The factory spring clamp isn't sufficient to hold it on this barb. Get some pliers on it and just give it a rotation, trying to break that bond. All right, so there's our steam vent. I'll take our hose with the T. You may find that that barb is a little bit bigger, so you might have to spread your clamp just a little bit. So it'll be somewhat like that. Now we will tighten down the clamp on the radiator. You can take advantage of the hole where the snorkel was before. That makes it any easier. So I'm going to take the steam vent. I'm going to take off the factory clamp since we will not be using it. I'll be installing a provided clamp. Install the hose onto the T. Tighten its clamp. Now we'll take our hose, routed earlier, cut it to length as necessary. Ours is already cut to length. We'll add our final clamp. Install it onto the barb and tighten it down. So now you can see our steam vent still is functioning as a steam vent, but also as a water return. Now I might go ahead and add one more zip tie to hold this line, maybe to this harness here. All right, now we're ready to install our intercooler. So we're going to take our intercooler bracket and our hardware provided. Now the intercooler bracket does have extra holes, so there's a lower and an upper. The uppers were there as a precaution and determined not to be necessary and actually difficult to use because the backside of the upper hole is almost inaccessible. So to install the intercooler bracket, we're going to use the provided M6 flange bolts and M6 flange nuts. So we will mount it using the two lower holes, and then we'll mount our intercooler. Now these were the smaller of the two bolts that were included with the intercooler kit. It's the M6 hardware. So to tighten it down, we'll use a 10mm socket and 10mm wrench. All right, now we're ready to install our intercooler with the provided intercooler hardware. Two M8 bolts with M8 washers. Now, the intercooler does have a logo free and a logo side. Just a heads up that if you don't have your logo showing, it does void the warranty. Just kidding, but seriously, logo out. Push it up in place. Get our bolts started here. Now we'll tighten them down with a 13mm socket. Now we do want to leave these caps in place to keep debris out of the intercooler. We are going to have to drill a hole through the bulkhead here, and you don't want any shavings in there. So leave those caps on until we're ready to remove them. Now we are ready to begin our intercooler hose installation. Before we can do that, we do have to drill a hole through this bulkhead panel for the compressor outlet hose. So we have this 3D printed guide that is provided to help you locate where the hole needs to go. So we're going to locate this hood latch sensor, which not all NCs have, and we're going to unclip it to expose this slot. The bracket has a peg that will go into that slot, and because we've already removed our headlights, it will align with the hole here. So if you haven't pulled your headlights, just pull this one bolt out, and then once the guide's in place, put it back in. So now, in the center of this hole, that's your center marking for where you need to drill the hole. So with that done, we can remove the guide. We'll drill a pilot hole, 3/16 or some equivalent size, and then we will use a 3-inch hole saw to cut our large hole. There are some things behind here, so do take care as you drill holes. Make sure you don't poke into anything. It's not a bad idea to unbolt your expansion tank just to pull it out of the way so you can see exactly what's back there. But the main thing is don't just ram it through as you're drilling. So we have our pilot hole bit and some safety glasses, so we are ready to drill our hole. Now we'll take our 3-inch hole saw and open this hole up. All right, now that we have a giant hole through the bulkhead, let's clean up our hole with a deburring tool. Once we have it cleaned up, we will give it a touch of paint on the open edge to prevent any kind of corrosion. Okay. All right, now that we have our hole drilled and touched up, we're ready to fully install our intercooler guide plate. So we no longer need the center section of this, since this was only used for marking our original drill hole. So we'll take some side cuts. We're gonna just cut as flush as we can to the inner diameter. And then this can be tossed. Now what we're gonna be doing is installing this from the front as we did before. And this piece installs behind. We're gonna sandwich the bulkhead with these plates. Now, once you have it fully pushed together, they will snap into place. So we wanna make sure that that snap occurs. So first things first, I'm gonna temporarily remove the expansion tank to make putting this in a little easier. So using a 10mm socket, I'm gonna remove 3 nuts and loosen this 4th one. So we'll start with this one. We'll just need to break it loose. Take it out a couple turns. So now we can just take this up and over a little bit. That's just gonna give us a little bit more access to the backside of our hole. This one first. Put that one where it goes. So with our piece snapped into place, you'll notice we haven't put our bolt back in yet. That's because we still need to put our tray in. And for that, we'll temporarily remove the headlights again. The other thing to note is our sensor plug here no longer has a hole to go into. So in our case, our tape is still holding it to the harness, which keeps it pretty well secure. If your tape is broken off, you can just go ahead and secure it to that harness with a zip tie. Now we're going to install our compressor outlet hose. Now we need to install it from the engine bay side through the bulkhead. And so that means we need to push this end through first. Now this is a bell mouth, makes it a little bit larger than the hole we have. So we need to collapse it a little bit. Basically, we're gonna fold it over like that. Now, because holding it like that doesn't seem very practical as you're trying to feed it through the hole, we're gonna use a zip tie to hold it for us. So take a zip tie, and it may require a couple zip ties where you have to put 2 of them together to get the right diameter. This one's a little bit longer. So I'm gonna just get it on there and started. Then I'll do my fold. Then I'll work it up and tighten it. to hold it for me, and I'll snip off the tail. Now you remembered we took our expansion tank down in a previous step. If you haven't done that yet, definitely do so now, as it will make this next step a bit easier. So we're going to take our compressor outlet hose and feed it through. Now the hard part is when we get to this 90. Just definitely takes some work to force it through. And like as it comes through, you also kind of have to rotate it like so. Now don't worry if your pieces come unsnapped. You'll be able to push them back together later, but hopefully they will stay. All right, with our hose in position, we can now cut our zip tie off. We can also remove our intercooler cap. We'll take the 70 to 92 millimeter clamp included with the kit, slip it onto the end of the hose. Orientation does not matter. And we'll get it up and over onto the intercooler. Because of the orientation of the clamp, I will tighten it from the side here with a 10 millimeter socket. You want to tighten these until you can see the washers. These 5 washers here start to get pretty close together, and you also start to feel some resistance. It doesn't need to be super crazy tight. About like that looks good. All right, we're gonna leave the other end of the compressor outlet hose off the compressor for now until we have our battery box into place. We need to maneuver it around a little bit. However, we no longer need the expansion tank removed, so we're gonna go ahead and put that back into place. Now, one thing is this back hose needs to go over the top, so I'm gonna take care of that now. And now we can put our tank back into place. We'll reattach all the original hardware and tighten it down using a 10 millimeter socket. All right, now before we move on to our cold side intercooler hoses, we need to take one small detour and cut this plastic panel in anticipation of relocating our power steering reservoir. Now, we're going to go ahead and make the cuts with the panel still installed in the car, because to remove the panel involves removing the ECU, and that just takes a few extra steps that aren't absolutely necessary. That said, when you're cutting on this panel, just take a peek behind and make sure that there's nothing that you're going to cut through. So make your cuts nice and shallow and just take some extra care in this step. So now on this plastic panel, I have made some marks where we need to cut. So if you follow where this kind of bulge is down here at the bottom, you'll see this rib here, right at the last portion of the bulge. We're going to cut inside this rib down to the base, and then we're going to cut along the base for 2 ribs, and on the 3rd rib we're going to go horizontal and basically finish the cut out horizontal. And then down here at the base we're going to go to our 1st rib from the back of the car, cut across the inside of that rib, and then adjacent to the ECU flange, you don't have to be right up against it, but you want to be fairly close. We're going to just make a 90-degree cut there. And then on the power steering reservoir, I made 3 lines. So we're going to cut off just this radius portion, and then we're going to cut in and cut out this triangle here. So you can use a pneumatic oscillating saw, a Dremel. Like I said, if you're doing it on the car, you want to just use something that has a shallow plunge, so we're not cutting into anything below the panel. The main things to worry about are the electrical harness for the fan itself, and that's basically it, but check for yourself and make sure there's nothing there. With our markings made, we'll go ahead and make our cuts. Now we will cut our reservoir and get this ground cable off of it so we don't accidentally cut that. Now I've switched to a sanding wheel so I can go over each of the cuts that I've made and clean them up. Then any of the little confetti that's kind of left over, you can usually kind of scrape off with a blade just at an angle here. All right, we realized after our initial cut that we made it on the wrong rib. We need to have our cut just forward of the 5th rib. All right, now we're ready to install our throttle body inlet hose. Now it is not the same on both ends. One end has a bell mouth. Now that bell mouth is going to go over the MAF tube. So the end that attaches to the throttle body is just straight. The clamp on both sides is the same size. So we'll take one of the provided clamps, install the hose, tighten this clamp down. We want the hose to be parallel to the ground. And same as before, we're going to tighten our constant torque clamp until these washers are compressed. Okay. All right, now our next step, we want to install our MAF tube. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and put our MAF sensor into it. So we have our factory MAF sensor still in the upper portion of the air box. We need to remove that with a Phillips screwdriver. And then we'll install it into our MAF tube using the provided hardware that requires a 3mm Allen tool. So we will undo the Phillips. As we take the MAF sensor out, we're going to inspect the condition of our O-ring. A new O-ring is provided in the miscellaneous bag kit in case yours is damaged. All right, so now we'll take our hardware that's just hand threaded in. There are little washers on there, so make sure you get those. Now, as mentioned before, our sensor will only go in one way. Basically, if you're looking at the Flyin Miata logo, you should also be able to read the text. It'll be in the same orientation. Try to go backwards, it just will not go in any other way. Make sure the O-ring goes down in that groove okay. Get those snug. Now these are going into aluminum, so you don't need to go crazy on them. They're held in place with a lock washer. So just get them nice and snug and you'll be good to go. All right, now let's install our MAF tube. We're gonna use our only other clamp included with the throttle body hose. Now you'll notice 2 notches on our MAF pipe, and those are to correlate with 2 arrows on the throttle body hose and in the future on our intercooler outlet hose. We want those to line up. And also notice the MAF orientation. There is a small arrow inscribed here indicating airflow toward the throttle body. And also the MAF sensor is going to be closer to the throttle body hose. So we'll slip on our hose, clamp, install our pipe, get the alignment just right, or I'll move the clamp out of the way so you can see the alignment here. I'm gonna put the clamp low just to hide it a little bit, and we'll get that tight. Okay. Now, similar to the compressor outlet hose on the passenger side, we have similar 3D printed bulkhead plates to help seal up the bulkhead after the intercooler hose passes through. So we're gonna take our plate, which is the one with the nice clean hole in the middle. It's a fancy little Easter egg logo there. Now if you take your hose in this orientation, we're gonna feed the smooth side of the plate up and over the hose. And we're gonna want the corner here, the rest of it's nice and radiused. The corner will be up and to the left if you're looking at the hose this way. Now we're gonna install this hose from the engine bay side through the hole that the snorkel originally passed through. Similar to the intercooler outlet hose, this one has a bigger hole, so it's a lot easier, but you might have to go in at an angle and maneuver it around a little bit. All right. Now the hose clamps on this intercooler outlet hose are the same on each side. So we'll get the clamp on. We'll just get it on there loose for now. So now I'm not worried about getting this seated yet. I'm gonna slip on the collar. Now again, there's a smooth side and a ribbed side. We're gonna put the rib side toward the bulkhead. We'll get that just close to in position. I'm not actually gonna sandwich those together until I have the intercooler hose in place. So I'm gonna now remove the protective cap on the intercooler. Take the other clamp, get it onto the end of the hose, get the end of the hose onto the intercooler. Now that we have things in place, we can go ahead and get our bulkhead plates into position. And just work your way around the perimeter until it's all snapped together. Like so. Now that we have our hose fully in place, we're going to go ahead and tighten down the clamps. First, at your MAF tube, make sure that your arrow lines up with your notch. And once that's the case, we will slip our clamp into place, tighten it down with a 10mm socket. With our clamp secure up here, we're going to go ahead and plug in our MAF sensor. Now we'll move to the other clamp at the intercooler, get it tightened down. Okay. And that is the cold side intercooler. Now we're gonna go ahead and reinstall our air guide. So we want to figure out where we need to cut to accommodate for our new intercooler hoses. So we're gonna kind of hold it up kind of line up where the mounting points are for the clips. And we can kind of determine where we need to make our cuts. Okay, so I have an inner, an outer, and then a depth. And so I'll just make a cut here and a cut here. And I'm gonna salvage this mounting point, which is somewhat behind the hose. And I'm gonna make these cuts with a pneumatic oscillating saw just so I can get the nice curved profile. All right, I think we are sufficient there. All right, with our cover cut in place, we will now install our clips. We'll get the two underneath the headlights. Last one under this headlight. All right, with our tray in place, we can now fully install our headlights again. The other headlights. Now I've got my intercooler guide with the tab over the headlight flange. Now one last step we have is to install a sound tube delete plate. That is if you had a sound tube that you removed previously. So we have our 3D printed plate here. We're going to reuse the original hardware that secured the end of your tube to the firewall. Now there is just a little bit of bow in the firewall. The nice thing about our 3D printer material is it has some flex to it. So it will conform to the firewall as we tighten it down. Tighten it down with a 10mm socket. All right, thank you for joining us for video 4 of our NC Turbo installation series, where we installed our water lines, our intercooler, and our intercooler hoses. If you have any questions over what you've seen in this video, reach out to our tech support department. They'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Be sure to join us for our next video, video 5, where we'll be installing the power steering relocation, the battery, airbox, compressor inlet hose, as well as a few other peripherals. So we'll be pretty busy. Definitely stick with us for that. If you liked this video, definitely hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you want to see more content like this in the future. Thanks for joining us again, and we will see you next time.